Until finally, the crowd dispersed. And that is what happened. To me.
I'll be having nightmares about that.
You didn't see it live.
Hello and welcome to Haunting Button House, a BBC Ghost podcast. I am Luke and I am joined by Tash, as always.
Who?
How are you, Tash?
I'm alright, thanks, Luke. How are you?
I am okay as well. What have you been up to this week?
Much less exciting than...
Yeah, I know.
I haven't really done anything, which is, I know is sad, but...
I on mine I've put nothing of note, and then there's some other stuff I could talk about, but I've not done anything actual interesting.
No.
No, just been a week.
I feel like all I do is work and this,
Yeah.
and then maybe sleep somewhere in the middle.
To be fair as well, after you've come back off holiday, it's kind of
you're kind of just getting back into the swing of things.
The blues of normal life. You're like,
The most exciting thing is we painted a wall.
That is true, yeah, we did paint a wall.
And it looks pretty sweet, to be fair.
So there you go. That
looks good.
Thrilling content that you get from us, guys. Yeah.
What were your things of note?
Nothing major, but I know people who listen to this podcast are into British things. Obviously with Ghosts being a British TV show. I recently played a very, very British video game that people, if you're into games anyway, you might be interested in it. It's called Thank Goodness You're Here. And it's, if you like kind of like British comedy, especially like eccentric British comedy, I'd say it's definitely worth checking out. Basically, you're a little man, literally a little man. He's about that big. And he has to go and... Sorry, that doesn't carry at all on podcast.
About 3 centimetres.
Yeah. And he's like a it never really explains what he is, but he's a salesman. Has to go to this place up north called Barnsworth, I think it is. And he has to just do odd jobs for the town while he's killing time. And it's literally a case of like getting meat for pies because the pie shops run out of meat. The handyman is trying to fix the chip shop, like... Fryer needs all his tools, pick him back up again. It sounds really mundane, but it's like a bit weirder than that. And Matt Berry's in it, if it's any sort of suggestions on cast and stuff like that type of thing. Yeah. So he plays a farmer, not a farmer, no, a gardener. That's okay. More correct. But yeah, I thought if people are into sort of weird British things, then they might like that. But yeah, and yeah, that's all I've done all week. Nothing else. Game. Yeah, I've got nothing else.
I've had some feedback.
We have had some feedback. Yeah.
So just go through the feedback. I've actually been very thorough. So if I've missed feedback this week, then I'd give up with them.
Yeah, I was going to say, let us know immediately so we can rectify the situation.
Yeah, tell me if you've sent feedback and I've not acknowledged it. It's absolutely not on purpose. It's just because I'm just not very good.
Unless you said something absolutely heinous, and then we might have to but you know.
Your podcast is rubbish. What? Fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
I would, to be honest, I'm not saying do that. But like we've not had any negative reviews really, and I'm like interested if there's somebody out there
apart
who's
from
listening.
when everyone said we didn't like
Yeah.
Move swiftly on. So Caroline said welcome back, and we revisited some of Caroline's feedback last week, which I'd missed. She said Happy Holidays is a good series opener, lots to enjoy without there being one huge hook. There are no specific weak points that would bring it down for me. I love Kitty as Thomas's PA, and in fact the whole Thomas as a celebrity strand. I also love Pat's appreciation of Mary's simple life. I'm with Tash. Pack everything you can think of to make life on holiday simple. So much stress when you suddenly find yourself in need of a thing that you didn't think of packing. Absolutely.
See, I'm the complete opposite, where I'm just like, there'll be a shop.
The thing is, that I'll bring it. That's the problem.
Oh, even if I'm on my own, I'm like, there'll be a shop somewhere. I tend to not go places that are like, if I was going to the desert, then I'd be like, yeah, fair enough, probably need to bring everything. But, if I'm going to Berlin, I'm not worrying.
History/linguistic note. Riband or Riband, I can't remember how we said to say, is an archaic name for ribbon.
Okay.
I've always assumed you pronounce the D at the end. The earliest known use of the term is in the Middle Ages. So
They did like to add strange letters in the Middle Ages. I mean, we've probably taken them away, not added them.
Yeah. So thank you. Marianne said, I cannot believe Luke gave this episode a 5.
I stand by it.
Well, you're wrong. Apparently going on holiday makes one a ruthless critic.
No. And this is a TV show I like.
Mary said, I thought it was well done with lots of plot lines. Thomas and Kitty and the plague groupies. Pat and Mary discussing the concept of holidays. Julian and Fanny haunting the new lodgers in the guest house. Was it full of belly laughs? No. Was it well done? Well, yes, it was. Definitely an 8 for me.
I like the term play groupies. It sounds like something off some weird fantasy program or something like that.
Definitely. And Doc in Docs says, Kitty points out that she liked Thomas's poem about eggs, even though she doesn't like eating eggs. A reference to the very first episode when she was going to give a talk at Food Club about the first time she ate an egg. I'm also surprised at Luke's score.
Sorry guys.
I think the season is the strongest overall. I may be biased being a Robin fan, and the season starts and ends the main run with Robin focused episodes. And while the first episode of each season suffers from having to set up the arc for the season, except for season 3, the bone plot, there is still plenty to appreciate in this offering.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing. Don't get me wrong. 5 for me is perfectly acceptable. It just seems low because we've been giving everything else like 7s and 8s and 9s.
I guess, yeah. So just going back to some other feedback that we had, but I missed it last weekend, but it came in just as we'd sort of released the last episode of the last series, so it kind of got a bit missed. But Cheryl gave some feedback. We were talking about I Love Lucy, and I because we'd never seen it before, and we Cheryl shared some clips for us to watch. And then Cheryl also asked, and there's a question for us both, I suppose, is what are your classic comedy icons? In Canada, we had the opportunity to watch some UK comedy shows. My dad loved the 2 Ronnies, and some mothers do have them. 1970s, I think.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
We are big Mr. Bean fans and remember seeing the UK versions of a few shows that hopped the pond, like Ghosts has done. Mad About the House was an early example. The UK versions are always better. And then Cheryl also said, spoiler, you'll find the US ghosts that the actors are more concerned about being funny and concerned with being funny. I think because they don't write the show, they don't have the same deep affection for the characters. The camera work is different, the lighting is too bright, and it all feels too shallow. I think that's bang on pretty much from what I've seen of the US. Like I've watched trailers for the US ones, and it just doesn't seem to have that warmth.
Yeah. It does feel very much, and I feel like this a lot of times when they remake stuff, unless they go in their own direction. So like, I didn't watch much of it, but The Office, the remake of The Office, the first series, is kind of crap because they just tried to do the original Office, but in America, and it didn't work. Whereas when they go off and do their own thing later, like in the later series, it gets better, I think, where it's its own different thing then.
I think that's the thing, it's kind of like you need sort of going back. I mean, I don't want to skip Cheryl's question about what are your classic comedy icons, but just kind of going back to that is that I think you kind of have to appreciate that American or US comedy and UK comedy is completely different.
It's different, yeah, they're different things.
And sometimes trying to cross those over doesn't work, and I think.
And
I don't know. I just.
It's not even to say that I don't like American comedy series.
Yeah. Oh no, definitely.
Always Sunny is one of my favorite TV shows. So.
And like Friends is a classic. Modern Family, which we've recently finished. No, well, I say recently finished, probably a year ago. Yeah. So it's kind of like there's definitely like I really enjoy like US comedy, but it's that crossover that doesn't. I don't think I've ever seen something that's worked for me. But yeah, like there's a classic British comedy, Gavin and Stacey, which is like my ultimate comfort watch. Like,
I'll be honest then, I thought you were going to say Only Fools and Horses.
Oh, no, I'm going to get to that. Yeah. So, that's my ultimate. I wouldn't say that's comedy icon though.
Gavin and Stacey.
Yeah, but, but what I was trying to say was they remade that, an American version of that.
Oh, yeah.
And it just does not hold up. Like, it just isn't good. But having said that, there's probably people out there that love it and maybe even prefer it to the original. So it's all preference. But for me, when there's like a British comedy and they try to make Peep Show's a prime example as well, like it just doesn't work. Is there any comedies that have been American and they've tried to make it like UK?
I'm sure we've done it the other way around as well.
Yeah.
I just can't think of an example off the top of my head.
If anyone knows any, I'd be really interested to see, because I don't think I've ever seen something that was originally like a US comedy that's been literally, is it like transposed? No.
I just remade
like
it.
Remade, but like
picked
word
up
for word.
Oh, okay, yeah. I can't think of anything. Yeah, I off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is something. There's got to be, but I don't know.
But yeah, so classic comedy icons. I mean, you gave my game away there, but like, that's fine. I think Only Fools is like totally up there. So that's Only Fools and Horses for any non-you British listeners. Definitely though, like a comedy of its time, and I think you have to watch it and remember that, because there's some things that they say in it that don't hold up now.
I think that's a lot of stuff. There's films from like 2010. So like I used to really like The Hangover, and to be honest, it's still a good film. But there's some of the stuff they say in that, and I'm like, that you can't say that anymore. You know, like so even like 10 years ago, the language has changed. So I mean, you can imagine when it's. What is it, 1980 something, is it?
Yeah, early 80s I think it started. I would say, what would you say? I've got a guess of what you might say, but...
for me, like, classic comedies always... for me, it's like stuff with Rick Mayall, Wade Edmondson, and so like Bottom and The Young Ones, that's the one that always sticks out. But it literally comes down to what your parents watched, and that's the stuff that I watched with my dad. You know what I mean? So, shouldn't have watched it.
I mean, if I enjoyed stuff I watched with my dad, it would be like World War One and two documentaries.
True. But yeah, that's the kind of comedy that I always think of as like a classic. Mr. Bean, though, to be fair, is pretty classic.
You can't get much more like British comedy, can you? It's,
but I think before the 80s, I haven't really watched much. So like I know about the classic sketches of like, well, to be fair, Monty Python, I've seen bits and pieces of that. I quite like Monty Python.
I've never really watched that. We've obviously discussed it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's like a big influence for the ghosts.
I reckon this is probably a bold claim, but the Monty Python, or the Pythons, I suppose, are kind of like the Beatles of comedy. Not that they're like the best, it's just that so many things have come from them. You see like their legacy in like a load of different like sketch artists, sketch comedy in the UK. Sketch artists, that's a very different thing. But yeah, I think that's probably the furthest back thing that I've watched that I actually enjoy. Like other stuff I'm not too keen on, but yeah, the 80s is where I kind of can go back to.
I was just thinking of like what the reruns and stuff, like Vicar Dibley is like another one that's kind of like, I'd say classic. British comedy.
Who writes that now? Is it the guy who did...
It's the guy that does Richard Curtis.
Richard Curtis. What
Yeah.
did he write now for Weddings and Funerals?
And Love Actually.
Love Actually, yeah.
Both great British films, if not. If you want a Christmas film to watch in August,
There you
Love
go.
Actually is where you need to start.
Just don't think too much about it. And I think with Love Actually, people analyse it too much and they're like, this wouldn't work because of this, that, and the other.
No.
And it's like, don't worry about it. It's just Christmas films.
Just watch the film.
Who cares? And Mr. Bean's in it as well, so you know.
Mr. Bean, not as Mr. Bean.
As
but Rowan
God,
Atkins.
as God essentially in this. Like, what is his role in it? Sorry, this is a very different topic, but
What do you mean?
he just pops up in different like situations, does something, and then disappears. Like I don't know,
he
like
kind
a
of helps
Christ-like
the
figure.
helps. He just helps. Kind of helps.
Yeah,
He only pops up twice.
and both times it's instrumental to the plot. He is. It's, honestly, this is our new podcast where we analyse Love Actually and its links to Catholicism. And on that note,
Okay, great question though.
yeah.
Probably, yeah. Maybe we need to put a disclaimer at the beginning of the episode to say if you don't care about what our opinions on things, then skip to like
Skip 15 minutes ahead.
yeah. But yeah, great question. And hopefully we've given people some things to watch as well.
Yeah. Shall we get on with the episode? This week we are looking at the episode Speak As You Choose, directed by Simon Hind. Hind. Anyway, written by Matthew Bainton and Jim Howick, and the original air date was the 30th of September 2022. So at the beginning we see basically a flashback to sort of the 1600s, and we see some farmers tending to their rotten crops. And they sort of mention that they'll be scorned by the village for this because the village won't have any food. They'll be run out of town, basically. And they see an opportunity then when they see Mary, who they describe as a strange woman who talks to herself and lives alone in the field. And they realise that they can blame it all on her being a witch. And they do mention at this point that her husband's died of an accident, and they're like, "Oh, is it an accident?" So,
I mean, they just come up with this out of nowhere.
yeah,
Literally,
I mean, basically, yes.
it's just. I mean, it's just wrong.
100% is wrong.
It's just wrong. They're like, "Oh no, we messed up. Oh, there's a woman over there. Let's blame her for this because she summoned the frost."
Yeah, I think
Take some responsibility for your actions. Don't blame other people. Don't get them killed.
they're probably like, we might get killed for this,
Yeah.
so let's get somebody else killed instead.
I thought this opening kind of scene, because we always have like an opening scene before we have the credits, was really short compared to.
Yeah, I thought that. Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I don't think that was on purpose. I think it was just that was what they wanted to show, and that's how long it took. But
Yeah.
I just thought it was worth noting that it was a bit shorter than what we're used to.
the older farmer as well. For talking of more comedy icons, he is in I can't remember the actual title of it, but Alan Partridge, basically, he's his rival DJ.
Oh right.
So yeah, very different role in this.
Yeah.
After the intro, we see that Mary is basically telling the ghosts all about her story of her death, and it must have been from this moment that we'd seen in the intro, because it then leads to her saying, and that's how it happened. All of the ghosts are absolutely shell-shocked by this conversation, like Robin, as they're all trying to say, I can't imagine what it's like. Robin says, you didn't see it live.
Yeah. You kind of forget that he's seen the death of all of these.
Pretty much, yeah. That must have been the most harrowing, maybe, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess he didn't actually see Robin's death. Not Robin's, Humphrey's death. He walked in on him after he died.
I mean, arguably still quite traumatic.
Yeah, I guess he's seen everything at that point, though, hasn't he? Probably.
I think quite like Pat sort of like apologizes for that,
Yeah.
like for making her relive the thing, and when she is like sad or anxious, or I don't know, she like gives these like little puffs of like smoke. It's just those details are like quite good, aren't they?
I like so this is basically what they've wanted for years, some of them.
Yeah.
And now they've got it, they're like, I wish I didn't know.
I think when watching this, obviously, on a second watch, and them talking about Mary, and now she's finally kind of released that traumatic thing that happened to her, that she's kept in for so long, and they've... Obviously, we know what happens in the episodes coming up. I guess spoiler, but we know what happens in the episodes coming up. It's almost like rewatching it. I see them like sow that seed of like, okay, get ready because this is gonna happen.
She's finally sort of letting go of everything.
Yeah, definitely. And I find that really interesting. Also, really sad. Because I'm like, oh no, I don't want it to go. But yeah, it's interesting on the second watch to kind of like see that seed being sown. That definitely I didn't pick that up on the first watch.
Yeah, definitely. Alison comes downstairs and she kind of overhears the ghost talking. Doesn't really know what they're talking about. She missed all of the gory details. And Pat, as you mentioned, sort of apologises. Said they're going to call off the rest of the day. They were meant to do. 4 people they would invite to dinner.
It's called If I Could Invite 4 People, Living or Dead, to My Dinner Party, Who Would They Be and Why?
Yeah, Kitty obviously chooses All Saints.
Nicole, Natalie, Melanie and Chesney.
I'm glad you know the names. I thought I'll keep it short.
I wrote it down. I'm not like a huge All Saints.
Okay.
And the Spice Girls, then I could name them.
Well, I mean, scary. No.
2 of them's Mel, so you're halfway there.
Pat thought it was right to cancel after what we just heard, which, in fairness, burning to death is probably a pretty awful description right before you go into some, joy, basically.
Joy.
Mike comes down afterwards and starts talking about the energy bill and how it's gone through the roof, and they basically realise that they hadn't budgeted in the gatehouse energy costs, and that's why. He says that he hadn't put it on the spreadsheet, even though they put everything else on, including the little shampoos and cereals. And they kind of lament that they aren't good businessy adults, which I can feel their pain there. Alison and Mike... Alison asks Mike if he's seen the stone from a ring as she's lost it. Mike doesn't even remember what it looks like, and again, men are just absolutely hopeless at remembering details like this. I imagine I would be very similar in this situation. Thomas tries to recite a poem to Alison when he sees her, but she's quite annoyed about losing a stone, and she tells him that he needs to stop all this. And Fanny tells him that someone should know when enough is enough. Because of this sort of stop to their plans as well, the captain isn't really sure of what he's going to do with the rest of his day. He's used to the structure and the the planning of everything. But Kitty says that she doesn't really worry about the rest of the day. She just worries about the now, which I feel very much on Kitty's wavelength. Probably to my detriment.
I wish I was on Kitty.
The captain asks how she knows what she's going to do next, and as this is happening, she's immediately distracted by a butterfly, kind of informing how her brain sort of works to just flitter on to the next thing. Julian tries to relate to Mary after hearing this story and says he was subject to a few witch hunts himself, which is very different to a literal witch hunt. He says, these days we actually listen to women and things have improved. And then as Mary tries to speak, he proceeds to completely ignore what she says after it. So again, being typical Julian of all promise and no actual delivery on it. Outside, we see some new guests have arrived at the gatehouse. And we find out this is Scott and Letitia. And we find out that they actually know Mike. They're old college friends, I think he says. And we see that they've pulled up in it's an Audi or a BMW, something like that. Some
Can't remember, didn't make note,
fancy car. They sort of say that, they can't believe they've inherited this house. And he says they must be doing pretty well in business themselves to have this kind of car. And Alison says that Mike should catch up with his new mates because she's neglected the ghosts and should probably go and speak to them and sort of see. But I think she says tend to the ghosts, so just go and see how they are. And then we go back to Mary and we see Mary recapping her time shortly after becoming a ghost. This must not have been too long after it.
She said she kept herself to herself for the first 50 years.
Yes, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I guess when you're there for eternity, then 50 years isn't that much.
Yeah, I was going to say. It is sobering when you think of it like that. You can't even imagine how many years that Robin has sort of seen. I mean, you can literally get a number, but to imagine what it's like. Yeah. She kept herself to herself. She does interact with Humphrey. She kind of just tidies him up by moving his head to where he needs to go. And then we meet Annie again. And this is kind of implied what brought Mary out of her shell. We see Annie is being chastised by a puritanical husband who's very by the book, very sort of as they would be at the time, I guess. And as he leaves, she proceeds to have a little bit of joy by eating some bread.
And then proceeds to choke.
She was not happy to be dead, but I suppose no person is at first.
Be this a joke? Why am I not in heaven? What, because of the bread? I have lived a lifetime abstaining from all pleasures, listening to his verbal effluence all the day long. Could not so much as cough without furious consequence. And by what? I was promised Eden.
How do you do? I'm Humphrey.
Ooh, another one.
What is that?
It's a savage of some kind. His name's Rot.
Raw.
That's what I said. Rot. I think it's short for something.
So Annie finally stops ranting I say ranting, she's very warranted ranting.
Yeah, I think Mary, I like how she says she was not happy to be dead, but no person is at first.
Yeah, I can imagine, yeah. Especially as she said, she's not gone to heaven, which she was promised.
Yeah.
She sort of, she runs into Humphrey, who she's shocked by, as you would be.
You would be.
And also Robin, who we find out is not actually called Robin.
We knew this before.
Did they mention it before in the series? I can't remember if they said it before.
They've either mentioned it before or I remember in a more recent episode. Yeah, I'm sure it is because they say, like, his name's Raw.
Yeah, and they just say Robin just to...
Yeah, it's a bit like Paddington.
That's true, yeah. A bit like Paddington. I can't remember if it is, but yeah, they mentioned that he's called Raw.
I wonder where Robin came from then. Oh, it's got to be mentioned somewhere. Remind us, please.
Yeah. I'm sure we've probably recapped it, we've just forgotten. And she also meets Mary, and you can tell by their first sort of interaction that they're going to get on straight away.
Mary looks so kind. Like when it pans to her and she's just stood there like, hello. Like she just looks so like gentle and like nice. I'm like, I want to be friends with her.
I imagine, to be fair, you must be pretty relieved if you've just seen a literal severed head, a caveman, and then the next person you see is a relatively normal-looking woman. You know what I mean? Like,
even if she is burnt.
That's what I mean, yeah, relatively. Yes, but it must be more, palatable, I guess.
Because we've met Annie before in, I think it was the Thomas Thorne...
Yes, yeah.
What's the episode called?
The Thomas Thorne Affair.
Affair, that's it. Because she was with Mary then, wasn't she, in that episode? She
pops up really briefly, and they sort of say, oh, that was Annie. And then Alison's like, who's Annie?
Yeah.
Obviously, this is our proper introduction.
Albeit short.
Yes, yeah. Julian, who is listening on, Tries to leave, thinking that's the end of the story, but Mary has much more story to tell, and Julian again is a bit perturbed that he's got to listen to somebody's story. Julian doesn't actually like listening, even though he does say later on that he's a politician who listens. Elsewhere, we see Pat, Robin, and Fanny trying to get Thomas to stop with all the comments.
Just try to ignore her.
Impossible! Can a man ignore the ocean even as it drowns him?
She just wants you to stop the comments, Thomas.
I cannot simply... She is within me.
A very limited time where Thomas actually sounds very poetic. I don't know if this is because of how emotional it is about this. Because when he thinks about it, he tends to just forget all of his like poetic skills. But when he's like sort of just going normally, he's okay. But they realise that for him to move on from Alison, he has to go cold turkey, as Pat says, which Robin says is tasty. They explain what this is. Casually, Thomas just says, like I did with opium.
Yes,
like,
with opium.
Yeah. Never mentioned that before.
No. I mean, it doesn't surprise me.
Apparently it was just like artistic people used to do it all the time back in like the 1700s and stuff like that. And 1800s. And yeah, anyway. Pat says his brother-in-law did it for smoking. He said that he smoked 30 a day or something like that. Doesn't say what is like what happened with him like after this. Just quit smoking apparently. Did it cold turkey. Fanny says that he won't see it through, and Thomas says that he initially tries to get Pat. He tries to initially get Robin to
be
guard
his bodyguard.
Yeah, and Robin
Yeah.
Robin says he's washing his hair, which must take forever to be honest. He's got quite long hair and quite matted hair.
I was going to say I don't think he washes it.
No, I don't think so either. So he eventually gets Pat, who reluctantly says he'll help, and Thomas says that it'll take no longer than 3 or 4 days. So yeah, quite a slog for Pat there. And he says that he must not let him leave under any circumstances, which just reminds me of the way he does it is exactly how Super Hands does it in Peep Show, where he says, "I'm trying to hit you with bits of wood." So I expected Pat to be as like a pushover as Mark is in that, but you know he's pretty good prison guard, as we find out later on. Outside we see Kitty wondering about butterflies, while the captain is basically just giving us some facts. I really like, there's a quote in this where the captain gives a fact about butterflies that is just so, it is him, where it just says, a butterfly is a caterpillar until it cocoons and comes out of its cocoon and can be its true fabulous
So
self.
he says one day they come out and they are their true fabulous selves.
That's a better way to describe it, whereas me
Was
just
what he said.
yeah, the actual quote, or was it me just trying to do it from memory? Which I thought was like a really nice way of sort of saying that the captain needs to stop being so fussy about things, you know what I mean, and actually...
I don't know, is it literally one day they come out and they're their true fabulous selves?
Well, yeah, could be. Oh, but that's what I mean, yeah, literally that, and also... we see him later on, he's so carefree and relaxed and immediately goes back. And it makes me wonder if he was more carefree, if he would have actually came out, you know what I mean?
I like how we see that he can't skip. Yes. He just sort of marches back.
He does a light trot, as he calls it. As that's their next task, because again, he needs the structure of what we're doing next. Alison returns and tries to spend some time with the ghosts, but none of them need her. Fanny's off doing something, which we find out later. And we see Kitty and the captain skipping and trotting. We go back to Mary. Julian is falling asleep listening to this story, which he tries to convince her that he listens better while he's asleep.
While his eyes are closed.
That's it, yeah. Just an absolute horrible man. she continues, and we see Annie and Mary watching two men be frankly quite rude to a woman. So they insult them back. She calls him a testicle with eyes, which I thought was an interesting insult.
I like the other one, another quote better. Maybe it's a bit later on.
I think it's a bit later on.
It says, "May the Lord give you the runs."
That is a good one, actually, yeah. I just wrote down Annie, a true feminist icon. And like, when you mentioned earlier about the opening of the episode where it's a group of men trying to blame a woman for no apparent reason, that she just was there for something that happened. And it feels like that's all the way through this. This is... I don't think it's like explicitly a feminist thing, but it's it's about a woman who's been held down her entire life, finally having the courage to just speak as she chooses. You know what I mean?
Because ultimately, there's nothing. The worst thing that someone could do to her would be kill her.
Yeah.
And that's happened now. No one killed her. Like she kind of just sort of. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess
she choked.
Yeah,
that was
Annie just choked. Yeah.
It's just a freak accident, I suppose. But yeah, she's very. Yeah, she's a feminine. I feel like I'm heading to be like Annie, but I'm like gonna say it while I'm alive.
Yeah. It's interesting that later on, I think she says something. I will come to it. I've actually written it down, so we'll come to it when we come to it. Mary tries to be rude back to these men as Annie tries to encourage her to do it, but she just can't.
It's just not in her, is it?
No, she's just struggles to actually be mean to them, even though they're very mean to other people. But Annie kind of takes her under her wing and says she'll help her. Elsewhere, we see Alison finds Pat guarding Thomas. And asks him if he wants to watch the Krypton Factor of football, which was funny. But which he really wants to do, but he's on duty and he can't. This is his job. He has to guard Thomas. So again, none of the ghosts want to have anything to do with Alison today. So she finds Robin, who's the only ghost left at this point, and he's just watching nature documentaries and doesn't really want to leave. But Alison convinces him that you could actually see a deer outside, and this excites him, so they decide to go on a bit of an adventure. We see that back with Mike and his friends are really successful, and they're going over how much money they make, basically, profit they make. Well, sorry, turnover, not profit, and they make that clear. And Mike explains to them what their idea is for the hotel with the house, and says that they need to sort of get this off the ground, but doesn't have any ideas on what to do. So he asks them for advice and then literally says, "Can you tell me the secret of your success?" And they point him towards something they're going to in town, which is the key to their success. And they say it's an executive seminar that's in town today, and they could potentially take him along. I mean, it's more explicit later on, but even at this point you go, something sounds dodgy. Robin and Alison are outside, and Robin is talking about chess. He's explaining his sort of chess tactics to Alison, which really impresses Alison, and she says there's more to him than meets the eye. And literally as she's saying that, he goes and chases down a squirrel that he's seen. This is the first time we see that Robin, very intelligent, acts like a dog a lot of the time. And we see this more later on as well. Mike comes outside to see Alison, and he tells her about the seminar and what this is all planned, about them going to this. And Alison rightfully sounds a bit like a cult. Mike's friends arrive and do not help the situation in the slightest. They say, I know it. They basically say, it sounds a bit culty, but you only have to wear the sashes to show that you're a virgin speaker before you make an oath. And it's like, okay, they've completely tipped over into...
And meet the High Shepherd.
Meet the High Shepherd, that was it, yeah. So, they hammer you over the head with, this is a cult at this point. They even say they can give them a lift, and they seemingly can't back out of this now as they've sort of been trapped in this. And Alison is kind of, at this point, just watching Mike squirm. We go back to the flashback and we see Mary struggling to speak her mind, even to a scarecrow at this point. And yeah, she's just not having any joy with her training, basically. We see Kitty and the captain lying down, and they're singing the shapes of clouds. And the captain awkwardly joins in towards the end as he sees the shape of a gun. And he seems to be having fun. But he does say that it's a nice way to kill 2 hours, and Kitty sort of takes umbrage with this.
That was a very jolly sing-song, Kitty.
Wasn't it?
Yes, and it must have killed, what do you think, 2 hours, or...?
That's your problem.
Huh?
Why would you want to kill time? It's there to be enjoyed, not killed.
Yes, but... I mean, you seem to enjoy everything, Kitty, and I just don't know how...
If you're doing it right, you don't even notice the time.
Nice little life lesson, I thought, there in an episode of Ghosts to take away with you. You know what I mean? Yeah. While they're lying down, Kitty gets in a bit of a pickle as she realises she sat in an ant colony. The captain kind of tries to tell her that you don't need to worry, the ants can't touch you. And then the captain gets really invested in this ant colony and starts... he realises it's 2 ant colonies going to war, so it's his favourite thing, basically.
Absolutely.
And Kitty leaves him to it at this point, realising that he's finally found something that he wants to do on his own. I don't know if that's what it was, or if she was just bored, so wandered off. I feel like it
Probably
was the
the
fault.
latter.
Yeah, it could be either. Yeah. Who knows? We see Thomas talking to himself, trying to sort of talk him out of thinking about Alison, and he's really struggling. And Humphrey, who's in the same room as him and scares him by alerting him to this fact, tells him that he just needs to think of something else that's really far away. And Thomas concludes that that's a beach and starts thinking about a beach, but then eventually just ends up going straight back to Alison. Yeah. Thomas tries to leave, and Pat tells him no, he can't leave. This is not as stern as he gets later on.
Yes.
We see Alison and Robin, see Kitty.
She's kind of by herself, isn't she?
Sorry, I said Kitty, I meant Fanny.
I read
Fanny.
Fanny.
Yeah, as soon as I said Kitty, I was like, that's not right. She's by herself. She seems to be talking to someone, but again, she's on her own. If it was a ghost, then we'd see the ghost.
Alison would see the ghost.
Well, yeah, exactly. So she's just talking to herself. And as they go walking over towards her, she panics at first when she's asked of who she's talking to. But as Alison walks in, we quickly find out why this is, because Alison is standing on her horse. I like how she keeps telling her to move.
It's like, it's a horse, Alison.
And we find out that this is a pet cemetery. And Fanny mentions that she comes here, I think she does once a week, doesn't she, or something like
Weird that we've never seen her there before, but fair enough.
Yeah, this is the first time, She says that she misses the company of her pets, and we at this point we see she goes over why she enjoys having a pet, and everything that she says is basically a mirror with what Robin is doing, and we realise that Robin is their pet at this point. Back inside, we see Thomas getting really bad withdrawals, Alison withdrawals. And he starts seeing Alison as Humphrey's head.
It's like hallucinating.
Yeah.
I suppose if you were to like sort of simulate the addiction to opium, and coming off that, I don't
Similar
know.
thing,
I'm going to take a wild guess that you probably would also be like hallucinating and going through like.
Isn't opium like basically the same thing as heroin?
I think so, yeah.
I imagine it's like Train Spotting.
I only know it from like Peaky Blinders. And,
yeah.
He is he's not addicted to it, but he uses it.
I think so, yeah. I think it is. It's kind of like heroin. I think it's one of them,
like when you use it once, you are addicted.
Yeah,
so.
basically. Yeah, similar kind of thing. He starts hallucinating. He sees Alison as Humphrey's head, or the other way around, I suppose. He leaves, sneaks past a sleeping Pat, and he goes and sees the other ghosts who are assembled. Julian, who he sees as Alison. He sees Kitty as Alison, and he sees this somebody else there as well. Is it Mary? I can't remember.
I didn't write that down. To be fair, I
yeah.
normally do when it's like something like that.
I think there's definitely three of them, and I remember those two. And I can't remember if it's Mary as well. But yeah, it's basically he sees Alison as all of the ghosts.
Yes, I think it's Mary and Kitty.
Yeah, and Julian.
Yes,
yeah. And as this is happening, we see Pat emerge from behind and just tackles him to the floor.
Says, "Not so fast, you little blighter."
As this happens, Mary just continues her story.
Yeah, no, I cannot, Annie. It's too hard.
Oh, it is only too hard because you still think like a living. We were shut up all our lives, kept silent, kept in our place. Now, Mary, we are free. More free than ever in life.
I shall have no peace as long as she's in the house. Oh. The old witch.
Thou art a blackguard. Thou art a snake. Pox-ridden boil.
Yes, Mary!
Scurvy toad.
Oh! What's the matter?
Ooh, blister on my heel. I shall have my wife bathe it in salts upon my return. I'm sure 'twill please her to do so.
Oh, I'm sure she'd rather gouge her own eyes out with a fork. Looking at thy face, I can't imagine the horror of thy face.
How do I look?
Simply wonderful.
Ugh, wonderfully daft.
'Tis better suited to a dog.
Hush now, girls. These games are unbecoming of a young lady.
Yes, Father.
Yes, Father. Your face is unbecoming of a face.
Yeah, you big horses, lad.
The lark shall sing its morning hymn, 'tis bloom of bright.
I sneeze better poetry than this.
Yeah, I'd rather listen to a donkey die a slow death.
Yeah, me too.
It kind of just reiterates what we were saying, doesn't it, about Annie being, pushed down by men all her life, and she's kind of now got this opportunity to tell them what she really thinks of them,
where there's literally no consequences at all. I quite like this. And again, that sort of, I like that the thing that made Mary finally snap is when one of the women is called a witch, so it's literally just what had happened to her. She's like,
I think we were just to it in that quote where she's sort of where Thomas is talking. My favourite quote, my favourite sort of insult is to him, my favourite Mary insult is, "I sneeze better poetry than this."
I mean, I didn't know what we were including the quote, but I put there's a montage and he goes through. This is a dog-haired Georgian man. This is Kitty's dad for having a go at Kitty, and Thomas's poems, which you mentioned. So basically, just everything from that point we've sort of seen. It's a nice little reminder as well of the order as well of what happened after that.
Yes,
And then after this montage, we see Mary talking to Annie about her potato baskets and how high she would make them, and then. As this happens, Annie is whisked away, or as we find out later, as Mary calls it again, she was sucked off. And I love how when this happens, the first thing she says is "lucky cow," which is exactly what happened to the ghost at the very beginning of the series.
Yes.
The button, I can't remember her name.
Lady Button.
Lady Button before,
I think it's that point as well that kind of shows us that Mary is ready to move on.
Yeah.
I sort of took a quote from what she said I think it's just before, just after Annie goes, and she says, "Death may take from us many things, but it gave me a voice."
Yeah.
It's really, it's like a good quote because you can use it for a lot of people, especially when you're looking at women, and it kind of made me think of votes for women and kind of
suffragettes and stuff
that, it wasn't until like people were getting killed for that cause that like made people listen.
Yeah,
so it kind of brought that home a little bit as well. It's interesting.
How mad is it that was 300 years later?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know.
Crazy.
Women have been proper shafted, haven't they?
Yeah, pretty much.
Do you know what? Let's leave the podcast. I'm not doing it with a man anymore.
Fair enough. Just a really sad scene, to be honest. And like I said, I really like that quote. There's a lot of good sort of life lessons in this, to be honest.
In this episode, yes.
And then, Mary says, she finished it off by saying that you should make the most of your time before you receive your blessed suckings off. So, Alison.
Pause for thought.
Yeah. Many life lessons. Alison says that Annie sounded like a great woman. I think she just said sounded great. Julian says that he would know because he's listened from the start, and he always listens. So he knows the most about Annie, other than Mary. And then when the women who are there, so Kitty, Alison, and Mary tried to talk about this, he immediately talks over them. It's like,
says women have never had it so good. I think we do have to just take one moment to appreciate Robin's hair at this point.
What did he do at this point? I didn't realise.
What? So obviously before we like sort of realised that Fanny could potentially get from Robin what she got from her pets. And like it cuts to Robin and his hair's like beautifully like tame.
Didn't even notice this.
What?
I need to go back and watch it.
It's like she's been like maybe like brushing his hair or like working her fingers through his hair to like, and it's like it's like perfectly flat and like as if he's just had like a blow dry. I mean, it doesn't look like he's had a blow dry, but if you can imagine a blow dry without having a blow dry.
That's the only trouble sometimes is when you're taking down like the quotes and the notes and stuff like that. You miss some of the visual stuff, so you have to be more vigilant. We see Mike's friends arrive. They must be leaving, and they're ready to take them to see the cult. And they mention that they'll need dry clothes for after the ceremony. So again, some kind of baptism that they're going to receive or something like that. Or maybe they just pull out super. Maybe it's like Basil Brush and they just have super soakers and stuff like that. Spray the crowd. Yeah, I don't know. Now that's a cult you'd want to join.
I can't believe, that nobody commented on that we met Basil Brush. Like, of all the feedback that we get, nobody's gone, oh my God, you met Basil Brush. Nobody cares. Upsets me deeply.
Well, yeah. No, you've been put on notice, listeners. So yeah, as they're talking, there's some quick thinking from Alison as she's listening to Fanny say how that speaking your mind's great and all, but you don't want to get uninvited from dinners, parties by speaking your mind. So Alison decides that she's going to introduce the ghost to Mike's friend and looks absolutely bonkers in the process.
Yeah, that's a great point, Fanny.
Alison, you can't talk to us. There's people here.
Alice? No, it's fine, everyone. I can say what I want. Sorry, that must sound mad, but don't worry, I'm not. I'm just talking to the ghosts who live here. Say hello to our guests, guys. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. They say hello. There's Kitty, she's a Georgian lady. There's Lady Button. She was actually showing me her pet cemetery. If you can... Oh, sorry, careful. If you just move out the way, because Humphrey's body is just walking through. And I don't know where the head is. Anyone know?
Is this a joke?
It's not, is it, Mike? He can't see them either, and it drives him up the wall. Yeah. Now then, is it time to meet the High Shepherd?
There's a lot of good scenes in this episode. This one might be my favourite because we've constantly been saying, I wonder what it looks like when she's talking to the ghosts to normal people, and it's like they literally show you in this sort of scene. Even to the point where we see her shoo them out of the way, so Humphrey's body, and then it cuts mid-shoo that Humphrey is literally walking through. Yeah, I just loved it, and all the ghosts awkwardly saying hello back to them after they, as they just are looking at her mortified. And as this happens, obviously Mike's friends quickly uninvite them from this cult, as they literally say it's full, you can't join. So yeah, some nice quick thinking from Alison there. Although, if any of those friends talk to their other friends and say, "Do you know Alison talks to ghosts?" that might spread quickly. Elsewhere we see Thomas is thrown back into his room by Pat, and Pat goes full prison guard on him. I'm assuming you have some quotes that he said there.
No, I don't.
Did you not write them down?
No.
Oh, okay, yeah. He does say, as he goes in there, he sort of sulks, lies face down on the bed, and he finds Alison's stone, and he tries to get Pat to let him out and says that he's found the stone. This is the one quote that I got, was Pat says, "You ain't going to see sunshine till breakfast, pal." So the clock chimes and they realise they don't know what to do at this point, because it's Pat usually who tells them what to do at each point of the day. Julian says he's going to do the talk now, and he says that he's going to tell them all about the time that he met Brian Ferry, pauses, and then says "on a train." I'm sure I've heard that story before, the Brian Ferry on a ferry thing. So yeah. Robin says that no, he's going to do the talk, and Julian says, what's it going to be about? Eating raw meat. To which Robin says, no, it's about how to beat Julian at chess. And he follows up with a quote. I wrote this down as well. He says, "I'll take you down to Chinatown, bitch."
Does he actually say that?
in the subtitles, that's what he says to him. That's incredibly hostile for Robin. I'm sure it's a quote from a film, but I don't know what film it is.
I'm surprised they use the word bitch, yeah.
I guess it's past the watershed now. Like, it would have been past the watershed, so they can kind of get away with that. They don't tend to say anything worse than that. So it's,
no.
Yeah.
Whereas I've heard that the American one is like really filthy.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
I mean, I don't know. I've not watched it, but that's just what I've heard, where they kind of use swearing to make it funny.
Oh, okay. Right, yeah. I'm not too sure, yeah.
And it sort of brought the tone right down, didn't I? But yeah, maybe listeners that have watched the US one can correct me, but I'm sure that I read on some of the groups that they kind of use the swearing to as to try and be funny.
My guess is that obviously they came from like horrible histories and obviously have a quite kid friendly audience. So I wonder if obviously it's more adult in its themes, but it's not adult in that there's no like graphic nudity, violence, or swearing, so they can kind of go. Your kids can still watch it.
It's kind of like implied.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
Places, but not sort of so much that I think obviously very young children may not watch.
To be honest, though,
I don't know. I'd be interested to know, like, do people watch it with their kids, and you know.
I imagine it's kind of like, do you know, like some kids' films where they sneak in adult jokes, but obviously they're so.
They just go straight over kids' heads.
Yeah. So like Shrek always comes to mind. Like that's got so many adult jokes in, but it's only now you watch it go, how did they get away with this? And it's like no one would know. So yeah. But as this is happening, the captain arrives late and he's in a state. I put in a state of undress. He's not naked. He's just got his jacket up.
Very casual.
Very casual. His jacket over his shoulder. Yeah. He's just seems very free. I put. And he's immediately brought back to order when they mention that Captain America's on at 7:00. Back in his gear. I love the fact that they're watching Captain America. I don't know why, that's just funny. The next day, we see that Thomas appears to be cured of his sort of Allison addiction.
Just to go back to that, just after they mentioned Captain America, I put that I like it is. We've mentioned it before, but Kitty and Captain's relationship, and I didn't write down what he says.
He says something to her, doesn't he?
He
before
says
he
something,
switches.
and it's kind of like so he says, "Oh, what's the rush anyway? We've got forever," and he kind of winks at Kitty.
Kitty, yeah.
And she giggles, and it's not like a relationship where she fancies him or he like obviously doesn't fancy her, but like, do you know what I mean? It's not that kind of relationship.
It's like a friendship,
it's more,
like, yeah.
but it's just like they understand each other, and you wouldn't expect them to.
The next day, we see that Thomas appears to be cured of his Alison addiction. He goes up to her and he says that he's found her stone, and she thinks that it's just another attempt to woo her and thinks he's going to go into her. The stone is like, beautiful and whatever. But he says, no, I've just found your stone. And he does appear to be completely over it now. And then this is immediately destroyed when they go up there, and Alison, having seen that he's found the stone, says, oh, Thomas, I could kiss you. And then we kind of see him twitching, and he kind of immediately breaks.
So weird.
And he asks her to kiss him on the mouth forever.
Such a weirdo.
And then the episode ends. So that's this week. What did you think of the episode?
Oh, I thought it was a really good episode.
Yeah.
I think the only bits that I found sort of like not even boring or like anything, the only bits I was like waiting, it was the bits with Mike's friends.
Yeah,
I was just kind of like, I totally get it, and it was like a good extra scene because it kind of kept Mike busy while Alison was kind of little interactions with all of the ghosts. But it was just simple, and it was just in the house. And we saw like each of the ghosts kind of doing their own thing, and like there wasn't like a big event that was happening that all the ghosts were involved in. It was kind of like they're all just doing their own thing. We see them like on an average day, doing what they would normally do. So yeah, I just thought it was a really good episode. There was some proper belly laughs, some really good quotes, like interesting themes to take away like from the episode. It's really tricky. I really enjoyed the episode, and like I was gonna give it a 9, but now I'm not sure. Like I don't know if I could give it a 10.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I can't give it a 10 because of what I said about being slightly like, come on, like with the Mike's friends thing. But is that enough to drop like a 0.5 off the 10?
Completely up to you.
I know.
This is a conundrum.
Very
See,
difficult.
I write mine down beforehand, so I can't.
I write mine down, but as we talk about it, I kind of change my mind a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh yeah, that was really funny, and like that was really good, and it's really tricky. I am gonna see. I feel like a 10 out of 10 is something where you're like, well, that can't be improved. And although I didn't enjoy like the story with Mike's friends as much, it wasn't like a big part of the episode, and I feel like there had to be something to keep Mike busy, essentially, in that episode. I'm gonna do it. I'm giving it a 10.
Wow, yeah, the first 10. No, second 10. Second 10. Oh yeah, you gave a Christmas episode a 10. Yeah, true.
First Christmas episode a 10.
Fair enough.
Are you gonna add some applause?
Oh,
into, like the...
no, I was waiting for you to ask me.
I don't care about you.
Oh yeah, fair enough.
This is about women now, Luke. Okay.
Yeah, fair enough.
We found our voice.
No.
Okay, so I mean, I don't care, but like, what do you think?
I thought it was a fantastic episode, and it has everything that Ghosts is like best known for. Lot of gags, a really heartfelt story, and some real life lessons, which is funny because they're from Ghosts. The irony. I don't really have anything other to say than to give it my score, which is also a 10. My first 10. This is not a knee jerk, by the way. I know everyone's like, oh, Luke gave it a 5. Oh, he's giving it a 10. No, I knew the Mary episodes in this series are like ones that I really enjoy. And there's another one as well coming up, which I remember quite enjoying. But yeah, this one I thought was brilliant, and it's the best episode so far, hands down. So yeah, 10. IMDb less favourable, to be quite frank. From 362 votes, they give it a 7.8, which think is a little low.
Is low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd expect it to be like high 8s at least. You know
I
what
just
mean?
think with IMDb, we're never going to get it's. I don't know. I just think it's.
The trouble is, it's a small sample size, so I'm literally there. It's 362 votes, and I think it also does like a weighted average where it doesn't take them all in. So, yeah, it's
It's
difficult.
a tricky one with that because it always seems to be between a 7 and an 8.
Basically, yeah.
For each episode, but
I think, there's no better way to find out what other people think, apart from people getting in touch with us and letting us know. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's all we care about. We don't care about IMDb. We care about the listeners'
what you
scores.
think. Yeah, so 10 out of 10.
Ghost Stories with Luke and Tash.
So, this is called People Keep Going Missing Whenever It Rains. So I took this off Reddit.
Okay.
So I didn't write this. I found it online.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, the one I got last week is a very known.
I don't have time to watch Ghost, record the episode, and write my own short story every week. So, yeah, but people are far more better at writing than I am. Anyway. Every rainy day, we pray nobody is taken. You see, it's not just a kidnapper that has a preference for victims and uses the rain to their advantage. It's something in the rain that takes people. Little Abby was first out of many to be taken. Her mother took her eyes off her eager child to grab an umbrella when Abby let out a yelp and was quickly cut off. Her mother rushed out and called for her. Alas, she would never see her child again. Abby is still missing to this very day. It was only just the beginning though. More and more people continued to disappear during rainy days. Along with that, a pattern was soon noticed in the different types of rainy days. When it normally rains, one person disappears. When it's a downpour, 2 people disappear. Whenever it's a thunderstorm, 3 people disappear. Why are you laughing?
Because you're reading it like a nursery.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to give a bit of atmosphere.
Okay, sorry. Who are you laughing at? That's all I can think of.
Who are you laughing at? Okay, you spoilt it now.
Sorry, get back into it.
Some people conspired that an entity could be haunting the town, and was the one responsible for the sudden mass of who was responsible for the sudden mass of disappearances. As the disappearances became larger, and as more people missing you've ruined it for me now.
I've derailed it. Sorry.
As the disappearances became larger, and as more missing persons papers painted the streets, more people began to believe the theories. Despite what was happening, my brother Adam wasn't bothered by it. He was intrigued by it. He began obsessing over the disappearances, about what could be causing them. He even tried to get me into his obsession, but I didn't want to. One early morning downpour, I woke up to Adam nudging my shoulder. He had an excited grin. The sound of the downpour notified me what the weather was outside. I didn't understand why he had his coat on. I asked him what was going on, and his grin only widened. He pulled me out of bed and dragged me down the stairs. His boots were already on. "Adam, what are you doing?" I said, drowsily as we reached the door. Adam opened it, and the sound of droplets became louder. They danced in the air as Adam let out a giddy laugh. "I finally found it! I finally found what's behind the disappearances," he said, pulling the hood of his raincoat and running out into the open rain. I called for him, but he wasn't coming back inside. He stood idly as raindrops pounded on him as if he was waiting for someone. I rubbed my eyes and blinked before I saw it. A tall figure in a blue raincoat stood over my brother, almost 6 feet tall. My brother turned to me and smiled with glee. "I finally found it," he squealed, before the figure in the blue raincoat quickly embraced my brother, and in only 3 seconds they were gone. I rubbed my eyes. Nothing, just endless rain falling onto the ground and the roof. Adam was right after all. He found out what the cause behind all the disappearances was in our town, at the cost of him joining them.
Wow. A lot to think about there, isn't there?
There is a lot to think about. So, join us next week. If anybody has any short ghost stories, send them in. I'm more than happy to read yours. Or if you want to write one.
No AI. Don't ask AI to do it, even though I did the last week.
Luke's a cheater.
No, I didn't ask him to do it. I just took a very well-known ghost story and just said, I literally said, make it sound scarier. It went way too far. Anyway, but very scary, yeah. I did scary stories.
Thanks for listening. We love to hear what you think, and if you'd like to keep up to date with when new episodes of the podcast are released, you can follow us on our Instagram and our Facebook profile. Just search Haunting Button House. You can also get in touch via email at hauntingbuttonhouse@outlook.com.